Again, just a home run, that a softball lobbed towards Governor Romney that he should be able to hit right into the cheap seats. And then instead, I read a headline in this morning's Houston Chronicle. Ron Paul will not get speaking slot at GOP convention. The longtime Texas congressman, who frankly is, in my view, way more than just an individual, he's a movement, as I've said repeatedly, tried but failed to get a speaking slot at this year's Republican National Convention. Now, this to me is infuriating. Do you know how many young people follow Ron Paul? Do you know how many people want to be called Republicans who embrace the Ron Paul movement? The Houston Chronicle describes Ron Paul as the man who marshaled the American Tea Party movement. He's right. No Ron Paul, in my view, no Tea Party. Do I agree with everything Ron Paul represents? No, I don't. But I also appreciate the millions of people in this country who support him, who approve of him, and who are, I think, going to be livid that he has once again been shut out by the Republican establishment, an establishment that is so terrified of Ron Paul. I am so fired up about this today. I feel like we've taken one step forward with Obama's goofball statements about business and the government over the weekend, and two back. Mitt Romney could take a lead on this and say, because he's the titular head of the GOP convention, Ron Paul should be there. You don't have to give him a primetime slot, but give Ron Paul and his supporters a bone. Throw him a bone. Let him speak. 1-800-655-MIKE. You agree with me or not? Let's find out. Shave America. 26 minutes before the hour. I admit I'm angry. I admit I'm fired up. I'm frustrated. I get lost over decisions that are made that I don't quite understand. What a nice moment it would have been. Or perhaps what it will be, because maybe there'll be enough national outrage over Ron Paul being shut out. He did not get a speaking slot, Ron Paul, at this year's GOP National Convention. I think that's preposterous. And it's short-sighted. And it's complete proof of the way establishment Republicans are afraid of this guy. They're absolutely terrified. I don't know why. I don't get it. You don't have to agree with everything. There's nobody that everybody agrees with all the time. But to ignore him this way, it's dreadful. Let's see if you agree or not. 800-655-MIKE. Here's Spence. Hey, Spence, how you doing today?
Doing good, sir. How you doing?
Doing good, sir. Glad you called.
Now, before you get on me, I've been raised a Democrat other than Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
He's an old family friend.
Okay.
But Ron Paul has brought me over to the Republican side the last several years because he understands not all Republicans make $250,000.
Well,
I'll do good to make $35,000 this year.
Right.
But I believe I have Republican beliefs. But Ron Paul speaks for me, and he speaks for a bunch of us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, he does. I mean, here's a guy who has an ideology that many people like yourself admire and support, and why you should be you're being shut out of the GOP convention. Here you are, a lifelong Democrat who can call yourself a Republican because of Ron Paul, and you're not allowed to have a seat at the table at the GOP convention. You should see the speakers list from the last convention. I mean, Joe Lieberman, remember that? All kinds of speakers who, Meg Whitman from eBay, she gets to speak last time, but not Ron Paul. Don't you think Ron Paul is an important part of this electorate, this process? What is this, payback because he didn't back John McCain last time? What could it be? 800-655-Mike. Maria, you're next. Hey, Maria, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
My point is, this is the most important election any of us will ever vote in our lifetime.
I agree.
And I'm not I'm a Gingrich, Santorum supporter.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a pro Ron Paul, but I am pro Ron Paul in this sense. You are right. He has many, many young folks who are followers. And he has courted that group of people. The Republicans need those votes. If they are so sure that they're going to win this election, then they better take another look, because Ron Paul threatened to go on the ballot as an independent. And that's exactly what the Republican Party is pushing him into doing.
Well, there's just no reason, Maria, to pick a fight with people of all ages from all over the country who support the guy. There's just no reason. There's no purpose. What's the point in infuriating Ron Paul supporters yet again? And yet establishment Republicans do this all the time. I've heard my colleagues call Ron Paul supporters crazy. I've heard broadcasters, pundits, writers, they're just a bunch of whack jobs. They're far out there. They're fixated on the reserve, the Fed, and the gold and all. Hey, don't talk down to a huge chunk of voters who might just say, you know what? I'll pull the lever for Mitt Romney because this is a party that does believe in a big enough tent that Ron Paul gets to be invited to the dance. I'm just so fired up about this. Karen, you're next up on the Mike Gallagher Show. Karen, how are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm doing fine.
Good.
We're going to have our second spat that we've had in about 10 years.
Yikes. Well, that's not too bad. 2 spats. If I only had 2 spats with my Denise over 10 years, we would have been cooking with gas. So 2 isn't too bad. Why? But you don't think he should be allowed to speak?
No, it's not a question of being allowed or not allowed. The Democrats have one voice. They have very coordinated, orchestrated talking points. It is so egregious what the Democrats are doing.
Right.
And this is the first time that the GOP will have a national stage since the long, drawn-out primaries. The primaries are over.
Right.
I hear you about Ron Paul, but what the GOP needs to do is to start to control the narrative, and that must happen in Tampa. And what I think could possibly happen is there will be talking points about Ron Paul, but I do think it is a great era to allow this prolonged primary to be extended at the prime opportunity for the GOP, again, to control the narrative.
Yeah, I understand the argument. The problem with the argument, Karen, is it sounds to me like it's coming from the Karl Roves and the sort of the architects of sticking to the script and having, a narrative that everybody must obey. Again, I really do understand the practicality of your argument. However, it reminds me of Trent Lott. We spoke today with Matt Kibbe, who wrote a great book, Hostile Takeover. And he included in his book a quote from Trent Lott from Mississippi, who once said, "We don't need a lot of Jim DeMint disciples. As soon as they get here, we need to co-opt them." And as the great Matt Kibbe writes in his book, that's that establishment view, because Jim DeMint, Senator DeMint from South Carolina, Tea Party followers and supporters, Ron Paul movement supporters, challenge the establishment and say, listen, it is truly we the people. We want limited government. We want the government returned to the confines of the Constitution where it belongs, not a government that somebody like Barack Obama thinks we should be bowing to and giving as many tax dollars as we can so that we can be grateful to the government for the role they've played in our lives. Now, Ron Paul is the perfect poster child for limited government. So I fear that your argument is sort of, well, Trent Lott, we stick to the narrative, stick to the script. We got to co-opt it. We got to get him into the trenches here, and you better stick to one. Of course we have to be unified as Republicans. But I don't know that unified means we shut out varying ages, varying demographics, and yes, even varying ideologies, all under the Republican Party umbrella. Ron Paul's a Republican. He's a Republican congressman from Texas. And for crying out loud, I mean, Rudy Giuliani was a featured speaker 4 years ago. I like Rudy Giuliani a lot. Ideologically, he's a pro-choice. You know, on social issues, he goes off the Republican Party reservation. That's okay. He's a strict, tough, law and order, no-nonsense kind of guy. One of the best mayors the city of New York has ever seen, ever. And, you know, okay. I mean, John McCain, our nominee, was against Gitmo, against waterboarding. There's room for debate. There's room for people like Ron Paul. This is a big, big, big mistake. And I'm real disappointed. And I hope it's not too late for the Republican Party to reconsider this, to rethink this, because I think this is a bigger deal. Of course they want it to be glossed over. Of course, establishment Republicans aren't going to want to make a big deal out of this. We should be making a very big deal about this. I mean, this is a fight, you know? And I don't want to weigh in right now on the VP pick for Mitt Romney, because you know what? I say bring out the pitchforks and the torches, and let's storm the fortress. I'm sorry. Let's not sit around and try to be genteel. Ooh, Ron Paul, he may just be a little bit too provocative for our stomach at the Republican convention. Let's stay away from him. I think Carville has a point. These guys are, you know, they're coming armed. They got brass knuckles. Because after all, and he even says it. Carville says, the community organizer. He says it.
He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He sends one of yours to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That's the Chicago way.
That's the Chicago way. Well, we better come up with the, I don't know, the Salt Lake City way or something. We better fight back. Come on, let's roll up our sleeves. We can't be nicey anymore. And let's not diss Ron Paul, for crying out loud. What a mistake. 800-655-MIKE. Don't go away. There's a lot more coming up here on the Mike Gallagher Show.